So this is one of Cornwall's prettiest fishing villages. It's called Mousehole, but it looks like Mousehole, and I actually think I probably did call it Mousehole later in the video, but it's Mousehole. It can be quite difficult to park here. We finally found parking just before this place, the old Coast Guard, which I really recommend. You can also walk all the way through and get down onto the coastal path and all the way into the village from here as well. So in this video at the background, you can see a small islet, and this is called St. Clement's Isle, and it's around 380 yards from the shore. There is a legend that this island used to be inhabited by a group of hermits that lived there in a chapel from around 600 AD to at least 1540 AD. I think for this to be true, you would have to imagine that the island was a lot larger and higher. Otherwise, I imagine any inhabitants would be immediately swept out to sea in a harsh storm. Mousehole right now, and it's so cute. One thing I will say is though, it's an absolute nightmare to park here. The streets are so narrow, but it's very, very cute, and every little street that you go down, there's the most beautifully decorated houses, and they're so... I think it might be difficult to spend the whole day here, but if you're in Penzance, it's certainly a great way to spend a couple of hours. Mousehole has retained much of its old world charm, and that's what makes it so special. It's got a lot of small, bustling streets with little shops, galleries and cafes, and they're all quite spread out. So there are a few along the harbour here, but then you can find lots more when you walk around all the streets. The other thing that really stands out about this village is the cute little cottages. They're mostly built from Lamorna granite, and they're just so nicely decorated on the outside. So many of them have put such an effort into their gardens, and they've filled them with all kinds of charms and love signs and amazing plants. You can easily spend an hour just wandering around all the back streets and alleys and observing all the beautifully done out cottages. I also just couldn't believe they had banana trees growing in people's gardens. This one had a whole garden full of trees that even had fruit on. This is testament to the fact that there must be a warmer climate down here. So there's some really interesting history and legends attached to this particular village, and one of them is that there was an ancient prediction in the old Cornish language that stated that strangers would land on the Merlin Rock near the harbour and that Mousehole would be burned to the ground. This prediction unfortunately did come true, with Mousehole being burnt to the ground by the Spaniards in the late 16th century, with only one house that was left remaining. An additional part of the story is that Squire Jenkin Keigwin was unfortunately killed here on the 23rd of July 1595 defending his house against the Spaniards, so that all the other villagers made off in panic when they started burning the houses. However, Jenkin stood defiantly outside his home right to the end, and even though he was killed, he earned so much respect from the Spaniards that his was the only house that wasn't burnt to the ground, and it still remains today. To be honest, for a small village, it's gone through quite a traumatic history because there was also a Penlee lifeboat disaster on the 19th of December 1981. The Union Star coaster had its engines fail and the Penlee lifeboat went out in aid of the big boat. However, conditions were atrocious. There was hurricane-force winds and the waves reached up to 60 feet high. After the lifeboat had managed to rescue 4 people, both vessels were lost with everyone on board. All 16 people died, and that includes 8 volunteer lifeboat men, and they all came from the village. So basically, in memory of this, every year on the 19th of December, the famous Christmas lights are switched off in memory of those who gave their lives. It's also commemorated in the Garden of Remembrance, which I didn't get to see, but I really want to come back to this place. I'd love to come back at Christmas actually and try and capture the apparently spectacular light displays they have here. This has to be one of the cutest houses. I absolutely loved it. I wondered if it was a yoga centre or something. was very surprised to see a tribute to Grenfell in the middle of Mousehole. So apparently there's a charity called the Cornwall Hugs Grenfell Charity, where they arrange for those who fought and lost loved ones in the fire to have holidays in Mousehole. Got here a little bit late on this occasion, so everywhere was closed apart from some of the cafes and the bars and restaurants. Definitely think this is worth a follow-up video, and I'm probably going to try and come back around Christmas when they have the lights on. So they have a number of these boutique art galleries, and they're just dotted around on the street, so you kind of have to go look for them. So this is one of the only times I've really seen Cornish used in Cornwall, and it was really nice to see a street name with the Cornish interpretation. I don't know if this is where Dolly Pentreath used to live. I couldn't find that anywhere on the internet, but basically Dolly Pentreath, who was from Mousehole, was reputedly the last person to speak only the Cornish language, and she lived here and died around 200 years ago. There is actually a memorial to her in the churchyard up in Poole, which is a small village just above Mousehole. After her death, unfortunately, the Cornish language did go pretty much extinct, but in recent years it's actually undergone a bit of a revival and people are starting to try to bring it back. I loved this house, which had all these different succulents for sale, and the whole garden was just full of them. And these are really popular. If you ever go to Cornwall, you'll notice there's a lot of palm trees and a lot of succulents. I actually realised at some point that this super cute cat had actually followed us down towards the harbour. Hey? Oh, can I take you home? Lilith wouldn't mind. I got a new pet! If you get to Mousehole a little bit late, this deli and kitchen is open a lot later than everywhere else for coffee, little cakes and snacks. It was still open when we left, way after everything else was already shut. So while I was there, I saw this little baby gull that was really struggling on this roof. He kept sliding down and couldn't take off. I actually did come back and check, and he wasn't there later, and there was no birds lying around on the floor, so I'm assuming he made it okay. Which does bring me to mention that there is a wild bird hospital and sanctuary for sick and injured birds, which is located on Raginus Hill, if I've pronounced that right. Obviously it was closed when we went, but that is another thing I would really like to see if I went back, as it is open to the public and you can go and take a little tour and see all the birds that they have there that they're nursing back to health. There's a banana tree, and I actually saw